I call the meeting to order, so people can engage papers in the back. Another reminder, there's ribbons up front to indicate you attended one or more sessions of the business meeting. It's the same ribbon at each session. I guess I will call the meeting to order then. So this is the main business session of the first main business meeting of the World Science Fiction Society business meeting at Chicon 7. It's 10:33 or so, or 4. Let's see, so the papers in back. Podium staff, right. To my left is Linda Denneroff, who's doing most of the work. As our secretary. I'm Donald Eastlake, and to my right is Tim Miller, who will discipline you according to time. So just to remind people that the meeting is being recorded, and if anybody else feels like taking pictures or recording or whatever, that's fine, unless and until the meeting votes to prohibit that.
Mr. Chairman, I believe it's a question of privilege affecting the Assembly. I think y'all ought to know that the raw footage of yesterday's meeting has been posted to my YouTube account. I can't post it to the WorldCon account because it won't take long videos, but Kevin Stanley.
I didn't hear it.
There was a point of privilege for the Assembly. The raw video of yesterday's preliminary business meeting has been posted to YouTube, so you can all, if you missed it, you can go back and watch it again and again. But it has not been posted yet to the WorldCon site. Yes?
I believe it would be appropriate at this time to thank Chicon for providing coffee.
Yes, indeed. That was one item which I meant to get to. I'd like to thank the convention for providing coffee and fixings for tea, both today and yesterday.
Yay!
Yay.
Yellow.
The meeting yesterday actually started at 10:30. The meeting today is starting more or less at 10:30. And the meeting tomorrow will start at 10:30 for consistency, and because I just don't believe we can really get notice out to people of changes. So we actually don't have a lot of business for today, so we may not need to run very long, although we have time to do that.
No, for God's sake, no.
Mr. Glazer, were you seeking attention?
No.
No, seeking support? Okay. Because to avoid congestion at the sign-in list for attendance, I said that we would hand it around during the meeting. So I don't know where it is right now. But, okay, it's in back, so if there are people still in line to sign in there, that they're welcome to do so. And as soon as the last person does that, there's no longer anybody in line, I would like it to be passed back and forth along the rows, and anybody who didn't indicate their attendance for today, or if they were here yesterday and failed to indicate them, they should mark it appropriately, and then it'll get up front, and maybe the last person can bring it up to the podium. So, the next item of business would be items up for ratification. So, in your agendas here, the first item is the first item would be the best Fancast, which is on page 21. However, there's been a request to delay that until later in the agenda because somebody's unable to attend right now. Oh, they are here, actually.
Oh, okay.
So never forget that. Moving right along. So this is ratification of item 3.1.
Mr. Chairman,
yes?
did you want to do the Mark Protection Committee elections? They're on item 1, or do you want to go ahead and do the
I was going to do that after the...
Oh, okay. Thank you.
We will have elections to the Mark Protection Committee at this meeting.
Okay.
But, hopefully people have had a chance to read this, and I don't have to. Is there any objection to ratifying this amendment to the Constitution?
Which one?
What are we voting on?
This is 3.1, short title, Best Fancast. I'll wait a minute or two. Give people ample time to contemplate.
What's the debate time on this one?
The debate time was set to 10 minutes, but so far nobody has indicated any desire to speak on either side of the question. And I'm sort of asking if there's any objection to ratifying it by unanimous consent. I heard a very faint object from back there. Okay. Yeah, speak up.
Ron?
Yeah, actually, I have information, speak, neutral information to speak towards the...
Right, well, if nobody objects, you know, there's no... Okay, there's been an objection, okay. So, do you wish to speak then, if nobody else seems to be...
Go to the podium.
Yes, going to the podium is a good thing,
Give your name, too.
even if it's slightly inconvenient logistically, because that way everybody can hear you and see you, and you'll be recorded. 10 minutes was for the station.
Ron Oakes, I am was the Hugo Award Database Administrator, and I have been authorized by Diane Lacey, the Hugo Administrator, to release some preliminary nomination data. This is numbers only, no names. Just for reference, there were a total of 328 ballots received for Best Fancast and 329 received for Best Fanzine. Total nominees, according to the current database, there were 139 distinct nominees for Fancast, possibly including some spelling variation, and 172 for Fancast, or Fanzine. And nominees receiving more than 5%, so reaching the threshold to be listed. There were 10 for Fancast, 11 for Fanzine.
Okay, thank you.
I will give this also has information.
How many ballots were cast total? Ron,
How many
ballots
total?
were cast total?
Total Hugo ballots, you'd happen to have that number? Roughly.
1101.
Yeah, 11 all. Thank you, Colin.
1,101 total Hugo ballots, nominations were submitted. Does anybody else wish to speak to this question of ratification? So there was an objection to doing it by unanimous consent, and nobody seems to wish to speak, so we will have a vote. All those in favor of ratification, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those opposed? Thank you. The ayes have it, and the amendment to the Constitution is ratified. Next item, 3.2, Semprozine. The time limit on this was set to 10 minutes.
Point of information?
Yes.
Does this include the best fanzine as well as the best Semprozine? Because my notes.
Were those all separate?
Because I did not see.
They're together as one motion.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
And I believe there was, I was given notice that it was going to be a suggested amendment to this,
Yes.
which would not change the meaning. If you mind, should I just give it, say, you want to give it, or I can just tell
if
them
you
what
want
it
to
is?
give it,
Yeah.
I'll say it.
So if you look down to subpart 3, amending 3.3.13, and there's subpart part 3, parenthetically numbered subpoint 1, says paid its contributors or staff monetarily and other than copies of the publication. So that's like extra doubly redundantly redundant. So the idea is to strike the words after the word monetarily. So in other than copies of the publication wasn't there, it's sort of that was the intent last year. I believe it makes no change whatsoever in the meaning. This decreases the wordiness and redundancy. So is there any objection to that change? Hearing none, the words after monetarily in that parenthetical point are stricken. Yes?
I wanted to make a different amendment, which also should not change the meaning of the...
Would you come with microphone, please?
What?
Come.
And state your name, please.
Joshua Kronengold. In, again, section 3.1.3,
It already excludes any other media that's required to be excluded via that does not qualify as a Semprozine or Fancast. And therefore, the equivalent in other media ends up only serving to narrow it further than be necessary to add.
That's already been stricken.
No, striking it is not necessary.
Instead.
He wants to put it back.
I want to put it back to make it clear that electronic publication is still clear. That's the media that we're talking about. That's why that's added.
You mean the, oh, I see what you're saying.
So restoring or equivalent in other media would avoid narrowing it more than necessary. So as opposed to we restore or equivalent in other media.
Speak up, Rick.
I believe that makes this a smaller change from the current Constitution.
Second.
So is a second, that amendment, yeah?
I would object to that because what he's doing.
Debate,
If you want to speak
debate.
against it, you should come to the microphone if you can.
All right. My name is Rich Lynch, and I think I would object to this proposal because by putting in equivalent in other media, that would broaden the category to things that are more than just fanzines. And that was not the intent of this amendment to begin with. So I think that should be considered as a major change if that is the proposal, not a minor change. Would broaden the amendment.
You're welcome to speak against this amendment. My ruling was merely that it was in order because it makes it a lesser change from the current Constitution, not that it's a good or bad idea. There's a speech in favor of the amendment. Mark?
Mark Olson. I think this is probably a good thing to do, principally because I really think it's important that the Constitution be clear that fanzines in electronic form are allowed. And the motion as written would by precedent remove electronic fanzines, would have to be paper only. I believe that we want to include things on efanzines.com. I think that's in many respects the future of fanzines, and I believe it needs to be done for that reason.
Is there another speech against? Yeah. You back? What purposes remember rise?
A question for the chair of point of information.
Yeah.
Am I correct that making this amendment would not delay final ratification?
That is correct. That was my ruling that it makes it a lesser change from the current Constitution.
I'm not sure. Joe Red. I think I'm speaking against. I don't see Mark, or addressing Mark's comments, I don't see anything that limits it to paper. The exact grammatical reading I get from it is that it's an equivalent to issues. An electronic publication can still have issues. So I'm not sure that this change in wording is doing what we think it is. It appears to be a reference to issues. And I think an electronic publication can still have issues, as we see with e-fanzines and many other things.
Speech in favor?
Colin Harris. The introduction of the text, the equivalent in other media, was part of a wider change made 2 or 3 years ago in several places in the Constitution to recognise the general availability of things in electronic form. So I think this isn't an isolated thing, this is part of the wider change we agree. More generally, I very much agree with Mark that the philosophy of the Hugos is we try to give the best reasonable coverage of all good quality work in the field in a set of complementary categories. And to me, restoring this word makes it clear that we're not going to unnecessarily exclude a group of works from nomination in any category. Thank you.
Speech against the amendment? No. There's only a limited amount of time left.
Andy Tremblay. The equivalent in other media clause covered things other than issues of a publication. The battle of print versus electronic zines is over, and a zine that's a zine seems to have won already. The equivalent in other media would be things like episodes, and that's why we split the Fancast out. So The medium is the same regardless of print or electronic.
So time against the amendment has been exhausted. Is there further speech in favor of the amendment? Yeah.
Andrew Adams, I think putting this wording back in is important because it acknowledges that there are differences between things which are coming out in paper form, where a single issue is the natural format for that, and things, for instance, very fanzine-like blogs which are updated regularly, but which don't have explicit issues. And I think that's where I agree with Mark here, that is the question here that is being addressed by this wording, and I think that it is therefore important that it is left in.
So time has been exhausted on both sides of the question. The question is whether to restore the words or the equivalent in other media to the 3.3.13. So we need to vote on that, and whether those are restored or not, then the question will go back on the ratification of this amendment to the Constitution. So this is not a final decision. Those in favor of restoring the words or the equivalent in other media, please raise your hand. Thank you. Those opposed? Thank you. The ayes have it, and those words are restored. The question now reverts to the ratification of this amendment as with this change. Actually, two changes have occurred so far: restoring the words or the equivalent of other media, and striking the words after monetarily, striking the words in other than copies of the publication in that section 3 there. Is there any further debate on this amendment to the Constitution? No, Ben? No.
The proposed... Who are you?
Everybody knows.
Find out.
I'm proposing an amendment. The proposed 3.9.3 requires that nominees confirm that they meet the qualifications of their category. I believe that those final determinations of what does or does not meet the qualifications of a particular category is a decision by the Hugo administrator, not by a nominee, and therefore I propose to amend by deleting 3.9.3.
Is there a second?
Second. Ben, you want to debate it?
Who seconded that?
I seconded it. You don't need to record seconders' names.
Do you want to speak, or do you want to speak on this?
My original.
Okay.
The rule as written does not put the final word in the hands of the nominees. It's still the administrator's decision. This requires the nominees to provide to the administrator information that the administrator would not normally have. Were you able to hear me?
Mark Olson.
I'm sorry. So, Eric, I believe Ben misunderstands both the intent and the requirements there. It is still absolutely the administrator's final decision.
Is there a speech in favor of the amendment? Glenn?
Does the chair consider this a lesser change? I do not think so.
I'm puzzling. I think it is does make a substantive change and might require re-ratification if this was adopted. Yes.
I agree to appeal the ruling of the chair.
Okay. Is there a second for the appeal?
Lesser change.
Second.
Okay. It's been ruling of the chair that this would make it a larger change. It's been appealed and seconded.
Point of information?
Yes.
Can the chair define what it considers to be the definition of a lesser change?
No, not really. Anything I would say is more or less tautological. In other words, if you can find a situation which would be applicable in one case and not in the other, you can find an example. This seems, it's very easy when it's like a numeric quantity or, something which is clearly a subset or superset. But this basically would, I guess that this basically causes the categories of fanzine and semi-prosian wording, whose striking is being suggested by the current amendment, really makes the fanzine and the semi-prosian categories more restricted. The problem is they're not exactly the same semi-prosian categories as they were before. Actually, striking it makes them less restricted. So, if there's anything that would qualify under the new semi-prosian or new fanzine category that wouldn't have qualified before, then removing this other restriction would make it a larger change. Yes?
May I speak to the appeal?
Yes. Yeah.
Still Benny Allen.
Don't ask what you would change your name.
The reason that I believe this is a lesser change, and therefore would not cause re-ratification, is that what we have said is that certain works used to belong in one category, they now belong in a different category, and in addition there is a requirement for the editor to provide certain information to the administrator. Any work that would have been in the old category and is now in a different category stays the same. The only thing is that a new requirement for certification was added, and since there was no old requirement for certification, I believe this brings us closer to the old Constitution in that all we are doing is removing a requirement for certification that did not exist in the old Constitution. Therefore, I believe this to be a lesser change.
Okay. I find that argument real persuasive, and so do some people in the audience. Do you wish to speak to the appeal?
We should speak against.
Against the chair's ruling?
Go ahead, talk if you want, but I'm currently inclined to allow this as being a lesser change, contrary to my earlier statement. If that's satisfactory to you, you may not need to speak.
No, I'm not speaking, I'm sorry, I'm speaking against the amendment, not against the...
Okay, well, not on the amendment right now. So, there appears to be no particular objection to my reversing my ruling. And so I will change my ruling and now rule that this is a lesser amendment. And so I don't believe the appeal is null. We'll now revert to the amendment to strike 3.9.3 from the proposed, from the amendment to the Constitution, which is up for ratification. So you're welcome to speak if you wish.
Am I speaking on the amendment to remove 3.9.3?
That's correct. The currently pending question is the removal of 3.9.3 from the amendment up for ratification.
Mr. Chairman, how much time remains for debate?
Not much. A total of a little under 4 minutes left for debate. Yeah.
Current and future Joe Rett. So the original reason for this amendment being added, for this line being added, is that this is one of the only Hugo categories in which the person who is nominating may not have enough information to correctly judge the category. This involves financial matters between the publication and the authors. In almost every other category that I can think of off the top of my head, you can look at it and know which category a work belongs in. This requires the publication to speak to the matter of how it pays its contributors, which is not necessarily public information, and that's why this is crucial to this. It makes it available so that people can nominate things in the correct category.
Okay. The speech in favor of the amendment? Leslie?
No, actually, I wanted to...
Oh, okay.
Still undrafted. I believe this is not the only category in which that holds. I believe this is not the only category in which that holds. The fan artist and co-artist.
Closer.
I I believe this is not the only I believe this is not the only category in which that distinction holds. The fan artist and pro artist is a similar distinction, and we do not have similar wording in those elements.
Speech in favor of the amendment?
Actually, we're on
What?
We're on against them.
Against, yes, right. Right.
Leslie Turek, I agree with what the previous before speaker said about needing that information, but I wonder if Ben would accept a change, and instead of striking it, say required to provide information that they meet the qualifications of their category, so then it becomes clear that they're not making the decision.
Should the business meeting choose to permit it, because I realize that this amendment is under the control of the assembly, not under mine, I would certainly not object to Leslie's amendment. And therefore, I would suggest that we ask for unanimous consent to make Leslie's change.
So is there any objection to, instead of striking this section, replace confirm with provide information?
How about provide information confirming?
That doesn't sound like an objection. Is there?
Just create a greater change.
No, because it makes, it does not. So is there any, look,
One of the
yes.
Could we have the entire motion, new motion read out in one sentence?
The new motion would be to, if this is accepted by the Assembly, in 3.9.3 to strike out the word confirm and include there instead provide information. So it would say each nominee in the categories of best fanzine and best semi-prozine shall be required to provide information that they meet the qualifications of their category.
Confirming.
Okay, provide information confirming. Is that okay with you, Ben? Yeah. No? Sure. Okay, you're shaking your head sideways and you said sure. Okay. Yes, right.
Objection.
Okay, there's an objection to that change. Is there a consent to allow this as a second order amendment?
Which change did you?
Provide information confirming.
There's an objection to changing confirming to provide information confirming. So,
Or was it an objection to changing provide information to provide information?
who knows? So is there any objection to considering this as a second order amendment? Hearing none. So the question is on replacing confirm with provide information confirming. It seems pretty straightforward, yes?
Point of information, his objection was to adding provide information confirming.
Oh, so it wasn't to the change to provide information confirming.
It was, specifically, it was objection because it does, currently, required to confirm is a yes or no confirmation. Provide information requires that they provide more information than this does.
So it's not a lesser change.
It's not a lesser change.
No, that's not what lesser change means.
I think it's still a lesser change. I still think I don't believe it requires more information. It's not clear that this is a yes or no as written. But so is there an objection to changing confirm to provide information confirming? Hearing, okay. So actually, I asked before, and there was no objection to considering it as a second order amendment. And is there any further discussion on this change? Yep.
Speaking as someone who was chairing the committee that came up with the language in the first place, I can't speak for the committee, but I'm personally satisfied that this also accomplishes what we intended to do. So I'm quite comfortable with it.
Is there any further debate on this second order amendment? Hearing none, those in favor of changing confirm to provide information confirming, please raise your hand. Thank you. Those opposed? Thank you. The ayes have it. So we're now on the, we'll actually revert to the motion to actually change the original. We're just deciding between confirm and provide information confirming there. So the question on the floor is now whether to actually make that change in the whole overall constitutional amendment up for ratification. Is there any debate on that point?
We're still on 3.9.3.
Yes, we are, okay. We decided between the alternatives of confirm and provide information confirming. Now we're deciding to actually make the change, to strike out confirm and insert provide information confirming, believe it or not. So all those in favor of that change, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those opposed? Thank you. The ayes have it. So we now revert to the ratification of the constitutional amendment, which now has 3 changes in it. First, to restore the words or the equivalent in other media in 3.3.13 in item 3 up above. The second, to strike out the words after monetarily in that same section. And third, to replace confirm by provide information confirming at the bottom. How is the debate time going?
Yeah, we have it's numbered.
It's numbered.
About a minute.
10 seconds, guys.
Oh, we have a couple minutes left. Is there any debate on this amendment up for ratification as further amended to make it a lesser change? Seeing none. Okay. Is there any objection to adopting? Hearing none.
Congratulations, just for 4 years.
So without objection, the constitutional amendment up for ratification is adopted as ratified, and will become part of the Constitution, or parts of the Constitution, because it's kind of scattered around. Next item of business is... Yes, sure.
Would it be appropriate, given that this was a committee previously directed by the business meetings for the chair on behalf of the business meetings to thank the committee for their work? This is a long process to get this.
Sure. Is there any objection to that? Hearing none, the committee that produced this amendment is thanked for their efforts. Next item is 4.1, which is the re-ratification under the proviso of the graphic story Hugo. When that was originally adopted and ratified into the Constitution, there was a proviso that it needed to be reaffirmed at this business meeting, or else it would automatically be removed. So we set the debate time limit on that for 4 minutes. Is there any objection to re-ratifying this amendment to the Constitution?
Objection.
Okay. Is there any speech for or against? Yes.
I have additional neutral information.
If you want to speak, speak. Yeah. When I say, is there a speech for or against, if you have a neutral speech, it's good to say that it's neutral, but go ahead and ask for the floor if you want.
Ron Oakes again, Hugo Database Administrator. Same information I released for Fancast and Fanzine. The total number of nominations received for graphic story were 344. Out of those, there were 247 distinct nominees, possibly including some duplicates due to spelling and punctuation variation. And out of those, 9 nominees exceeded the 5% threshold.
Any further speech on the re-ratification of this amendment? Chris? Oh, we're re-ratification. This is full.
Good morning, Chris Martin. Several years ago, I stood before you and asked you for your forbearance in giving this graphic story Hugo a try. I thank you for the opportunity, and I think it should continue. I think from the information we've received from Mr. Oakes is more than ample to prove that it is worthy and that there's interest to continue it. And I urge you to vote to continue it. Thank you.
Speech in favor or speech against?
Speech against. Ken Bloom. I am opposing the re-ratification. I'm opposing the re-ratification of this for exactly the same reason that Chris is supporting it. I think that the statistics show a significant lack of suitable nominees for the Hugo. I think the history of the Hugo has shown that there is only actually one at the moment Hugo-worthy candidate, and that, in fact, by their withdrawal this year, we now have a Hugo for second best graphic story, and I think that this is a bad thing for the Hugos. I don't think that the field, as understood by the membership of the WSFS, is sufficiently mature for us to be able to actually identify and reward the best examples of this category, and I think we should at very least not ratify it and consider at least waiting another 5 years or so before we look at it again.
Point of information,
What?
do you read comics?
That's debate, that's debate.
Order. Warren Buff. I do believe that the category has actually provided us with a number of worthy nominees over the years of its existence, and I've been introduced to several, which I wouldn't have read otherwise, that I'm very glad I did and was very impressed with, and I think that this alone justifies the category.
Speech against?
Phil Folio, who was directly...
Who would wish to speak for currently? Speech in favor of the
Bill.
re-ratification.
Bill, go talk. Go, Bill, come on.
Excuse me?
I yield the floor to Phil.
If he wants it, or if he doesn't want it, that's, you're...
We're looking for
You want
to speak again?
With 10 seconds, let me just say. Phil? I'm speaking.
No, it's Ken. Never mind. So this is, we're four.
Yeah, this is four. You have 51 seconds.
Phil Folio. Yes, I think that at this moment, we are more familiar to the members of science fiction because my wife and myself have been active in science fiction fandom for decades, and therefore that's why our work is more familiar. However, more and more people are working in this field, and if you shut this field down, you won't allow them to, this gives an excellent place for people to show their work to this audience. The Hugo packet, like we've already heard, has introduced people to new stories and new mediums, and this gives them a venue. If you shut this down, then, you'll be cutting yourself off. Yes, at the moment, we were dominating it, but we'll die someday. But there'll be a system in place for other people to come in, and their work will also be seen. So I'm asking you, please keep this alive. Thank you very much.
There's 10 seconds left for speeches against. Yes, in there. Were you on the floor? No? Okay. Any speech against? Yes?
It's a point of personal privilege.
What?
It's you haven't yet made the announcement about using cell phones during a meeting?
That's true. It will be desirable for people to silence the ringing of their cell phones. Vibration is usually okay as long as it doesn't shake the whole room. So there was one up front cell phone that went off a few moments ago, but I personally don't find it distracting being way up here, but it might be down there. So people should turn it off. Yes.
Point of order. Could we extend debate time?
How much would you like to spend debate time for?
2 minutes.
2 minutes. Is there any objection to extending?
2 minutes each side.
2 minutes for each side?
Yes.
Is there any objection to?
Objection.
Okay. Those in favor of extending debate time for 2 minutes each side, please raise your hand. Thank you. Those opposed? Thank you. The nays have it. Debate time is not extended. Is there any further speeches against re-ratification? Seeing none, we will proceed to vote. This appears to be a controversial matter. I will use serpentine voting. All of those in favor of re-ratification, please stand.
Favor.
Maybe not so. Maybe you should sit down. people, order please. So the ayes appear to have it by a boldly overwhelming majority, so this part of the Constitution is re-ratified. The next item of business is 4.2.1, Hugo category Young Adult Fiction. By the way, if people are interested, 4.3.1, short title UB is not lost, was disposed of at the preliminary business meeting. So, okay, question on the sign-up sheet. Where is the sign-up sheet?